There's two primary play styles that I feel like I hear about a whole lot at all levels of play, especially at the casual level, is like the footsies, neutral, the big Hollywood style of play, to be honest. Nice and slow with punishing, reading, XYZ, and then the mix up, or some would even say scrubby style of play. Bro, I think that there's a lot to talk about with this topic, and there's a lot of misconceptions with it as well.
I thought you were going to throw it over to me, or the Brian F style of play with the Unga dash straights, the -4s, and the...
Nah, bro, I feel like, honestly, I feel like you be playing some nooch. You play some nooch, bro. Like,
that's kind of my thing.
Your dash checks are sick.
Right.
Your neutral's good.
I think I've always kind of try to pick the characters that people traditionally perceive as like the random and try to like rein in that control. That's kind of been my thing. But I think what we're talking about here is why do that? Like, why not just go totally offensive? Why not just pick these characters that have these tools? Why not pick like Laura and throw out random command dash? And why does it have that stigma? People to this day look at Idom, the Capcom Cup 2019 champion, and they'll say he won playing scrubby. They'll say that.
And we're not saying everyone.
No,
but there are some people who look at it that
it's a real stigma. I mean, I hear it all the time. People will say they don't respect someone for playing a certain way. I mean, we heard it with another champion who won with a similar, not exactly similar, but with a more offensive-minded mindset. Mena, extremely offensive mindset with the birdie. Obviously, it's a character that encourages that because Birdie has very good mix-ups with command grab, weird spacing traps. He kind of thrives in causing a little bit of chaos, right? Causing that uncertainty for you to second guess what you should challenge with. Then he counter pokes you, leads you into a mix, and people didn't respect it. And it's interesting to see how there's definitely a stigma where like the right way to play is, pick Karen, pick like Chun-Li, pick Ryu or someone, and then walk back and forth and press low forward. And that's Street Fighter. Yeah, that is Street Fighter.
And bro, this is the thing too. I want to make sure people know that we're not trying to zero in just on, like Idom and Mena, like the tournament. This is something that is throughout all skill levels. Like
it's worse at lower levels.
It's even worse probably, bro. Like at the silvers, even up to like the platinums and golds and things of that nature. That whole skill level. And honestly, this is the thing. I will say this. I feel like on the way up, right, you are going to have an easier time becoming good at the game and having more longevity by starting off learning a more slower paced, footsies oriented style that everyone loves so much, that has so much eye candy, which that's what it comes down to in the first place. Just as a little side note, it comes down to eye candy. You don't need to know too much to understand how I just made my opponent this birdie whiff stand fierce, and I whiff punished it with my stand fierce with Karen. We all can see that regardless of skill level. What is not as easy to see and understand is how this Brutus, for example, Canadian godlike Geef player, it's not easy to see how he was able to read you on those two command grabs and then jump in the air, hit you with instant air EX SPD. So that stuff just comes off as more RNG. And when somebody whiff punishes you or beats you with slow neutral, usually, you know what somebody usually says, Brian? What do you usually say after somebody whiff punishes you?
Random.
Bro, what? But yeah, but people are immediately like, people are immediately like, yo, bro, like, well, sometimes if somebody's salty enough, they will. I have experienced somebody being salty.
Random
like, bro, why is he looking for that right there? That makes no sense. I've seen people get that tight. But yeah, in general, though, people are like, good stuff. But if somebody gets scooped a few times, they don't feel that way.
Right.
But, to the original point that I want to hear your thoughts on, bro, is like, I do think that when you're leveling up and stuff, it's better to have a more fundamental based style because it's kind of teaching you the game. And those things, like you said, with your style of play, you can apply that type of play style or, those fundamentals to any character. It's not the right way to play, but it can be beneficial coming up.
Well, I kind of agree. I think it's a solid base, but I watch Juna is one of my favorite content creators. He's more of an anime guy, and he had a piece where he said, listen, when you're first starting out, you don't want to be solving problems. You want to be causing them. And I thought,
that's hard.
You know
that's
what?
fire. That's fire.
You know
that's
what?
Fire.
Sometimes you just want to cause problems. And that's what I'm talking about. What you're suggesting is everyone goes and does their homework and solves problems. And yes, at a certain point in your growth as a fighting game competitor, if you want to like improve and be able to consistently win and learn how to play different ways, that's a great fundamental base that you're going to have to eventually learn. But if you're like at a lower level and you just want to go pick Urian and do EX knee, headbutt, tackle, do all the special moves all over the place, burn your bar and go crazy, people are going to have a hard time stopping you if you're at like a lower rank.
You see how far Mandrake made it with that.
Oh yeah, it works all the way up to the highest levels, right? I mean, it's a bit more sophisticated at the higher level, right? But what I'm saying is you can cause problems. There's ways to play that are fast, aggressive, maybe kind of ugly. I mean, just swinging. You can cause problems. And you know what? Sometimes you have to choose when to do that. I mean, that's even like at high level, sometimes you have to choose those strategies. Sometimes it's not worth it to play safe and calculated because you might just be outclassed in the character matchup. It's not worth it sometimes to sit around and play footsies, because why would you do that if the character who you're fighting against is better in the footsies department or has like whiff punishes that you don't have and is just going to dominate you in the neutral? Sometimes you just got to go in if it's not the matchup for that. And that's what characters like Birdie, characters like Laura, bringing it back to that, that's not really what they're meant to do. Birdie's got to counter poke you and get into those situations where he can get in, and that's where the party starts, right? He has good buttons, but it's about like goading you into doing something, right? Like I want you to try to take your turn back. Go ahead and play footsies with me, and then I'll randomly dash up and command grab you, or I'll use my armored moves to get in. Laura, same idea. She's always going to be zipping around, throwing out the thunderclap to control space, random overhead, random this. The pace at which she moves is meant to confuse you. It's meant to throw you off.
Yeah, that's a part of the game.
It's part of the game. And I know it feels bad. It feels bad losing to it. Because listen, I've lost all that. It feels terrible. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to beat it. And if you want to play that way, it's totally valid. And I think people don't realize that there's a talent to that as well. People feel it's like that they're not thinking, or like there's autopilot. Maybe, but there's a talent to excel at that.
And I would say that there can be some difficulties, man. I personally, since the person who taught me, my guy FNEX Raven early on in Street Fighter 4, he played Chun-Li, and I'm sure you remember, she was mid-tier, but her neutral was ridiculous. And Raven was a straight, robotic, calculated, footsies-oriented type of player. So that's how I was always taught to play and how I was inspired to play. But because of that, my line of, even though my fundamentals got good pretty quick, my line of thinking was very rigid. So I was the type of person that we're talking about, man. I had to break my mindset over time and realize, like, yo, there's beauty in this, this style of play. There's bits and pieces that I should take away from that.
Right.
And as you said, that I can't go up against a Madoc player with Kieran or a Dawson player and simply play nukes the whole time. I'm gonna get smoked just by the way things are designed. And just the last point you think of, I'm always gotta bring up the analogies. That's just kind of how my brain works. In chess, the way that those guys operated, those men and women, is at the highest level, they need to know every single opening in the game, or at least all of the main ones, all of the main lines. They need to know all of them. And I think the same thing goes for fighting games when it comes to knowing different character matchups, and when it comes to having different styles of play, different approaches, different openings. And if you do just stick to one or the other, that's scrubbier than either of the play styles by themselves.
You need to learn from all styles. And I'm glad you brought up how you kind of learned how to play the game, because I had the same sort of thing. I had my mentor, my sensei, JC, back in my Street Fighter 4 days, who was the guy who basically said, oh, why are you doing that? Slapping my hand off the stick. No, that's scrubby to do, right? And he taught me a very strong footsies-based foundation to build on top of. But I think I lost something along the way, which was recognizing the human element of fighting games, right? Like there's things that are beyond just the frame data. There's the psychological pressure. There's what people are looking for. There's people who, I mean, people make mistakes, and you need to be able to capitalize from that. Like the idea of, a bar, like waking up with your buttons. People are not going to time their meaties perfectly every time, and you need to recognize when they might be stressed, or when it might be like a scrambly situation, when it might be a good time to do that. When it might be time to bust out the reversal because they're trying to press the advantage. When it might be time to do that reactable mix-up that only works against bad players. It can work at a high level too. It's just about knowing when to incorporate it, and you need to open your mind to learn from the scrubby playstyles. And that's something I still do all the time. I play Balrog, a character that if you choose to, you can go ham. I mean, you can go offensive, you can go off the walls. And there's
shout out to Child 233. Shout out to my man
exactly
Child.
Who I was about to bring up. My man is the overhead king. I look at him and I'm like, what the hell is happening? Because I have not done that many overheads in 5 years of Street Fighter V as he does in one tournament run, right? But he wins those tournaments, right? He's getting those W's, and I look at it and I'm like, I can't comprehend it. But I still watch it, and I still try to see what I can take away from it. Maybe I won't copy everything, right? Maybe there's some stuff I'll leave to Child, but there's still something to pull away from it. Maybe there's more times I can go more offensive and mix that up, because people, just because the frame data says that I can challenge that doesn't mean that sometimes people don't get schmixed. Sometimes people just get schmixed, man, and you got to push that advantage. And if you have the mindset that I need to play respectfully and not scrubby forever, you're gonna be you're kind of blindsiding yourself to so much more that Street Fighter has to offer. So don't do that. Don't be worried about playing respectful. Just get that W.